Oh, my dog, she's so funny. When I am talking on like meetings, especially if I'm not wearing the headphones, like if I'm working and she hears strangers talk, she will get up in the screen to look at them to see what they're doing. So she sees me over here and she wants to know who I'm talking to. Come here. Come on. This is Callie. She's the one that sat in the chair with me. The one episode that, yeah. Yeah, I'm on the computer, huh, baby? Mm-hmm. Funny girl. Yeah, she's like, is it a meeting? Can I be in it? Huh? Yeah, yeah, she's a good girl. Right, Kelly's a good girl. All right, oh, no kisses. Get down. Thank you.
Well, howdy, everybody. I'm Wendy, and I'm on the Chic Talk Show. What is it? The flagship episode on Tuesday mornings, and also a Chic Chat. We're Team A, the A team.
The A team.
We can't seem to make technology work, but we're the A team.
For better or for worse.
That's right. Yeah. So I know that you're getting ready to head out to EJS, but I just wanted to come up with a couple topics for some of our newbie listeners. And I just want to get your thoughts too. So I think one of the hardest things that people have is what happens when I need to find a repair shop? So I'm thinking we'll separate this maybe like, what if you need tires or you just need a battery changed or some basic stuff? What do you think would be a good way to suggest for them?
Oh gosh, and I'm picky.
Well, we should be.
I'm real picky. Yeah, so I think this is a great topic, and I definitely think that there's like two separate, I don't know, I use two different shops. Like I have like my Jeep shops that I went to that specialize in 4x4s. And then I have, like you're talking about, something more simple for maintenance, tires, tire rotations, things like that. So I definitely think there's a difference when you're looking for both. I start out with a good old fashioned reading Google reviews. Wendy, how do you start out when you look?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I know for me, I'm probably going to reach out to people that I wheel with. Now if Don Alexander was still here, or, I might ask my husband exactly what do you think we should do. But I think I want to do this episode more like as a woman, how are we supposed to find these places? Because even if we hear reviews, even if we go with a recommendation from somebody, I still want to be able to walk into that shop with some knowledge so that I don't get, quote, taken advantage of. Yeah, because that's going to happen as a woman, right? So
I've definitely experienced the, going into a place and them talking to me like I definitely had zero knowledge.
I know.
Which can be very frustrating. So, yeah, I like taking it from that stance. You talked about reaching out to friends and people that you wheel with. There's some really good ladies wheeling Facebook groups. That might be a good place to start, especially if you have a local one. Like we have a couple local ones here, and they have like some recommended shops and different things like that. So I think that might be a good place to start reaching out.
Well, and I think too, when you're new and you just need to get a tire fix, or you need to, I don't know, get something simple. I have experience. I know how to air up and air down. And at the same time, I also don't always know everything, right? So what I've noticed is going into a tire shop with a limited knowledge, a little bit of it, I can have a conversation, then ask, and see. And usually they're pretty good, believe it or not. So I don't know if it's the girl thing, which I hate to use that, but sometimes just coming in saying, look, I'm not sure, might be a good option.
Yeah, I like, empowering yourself with a little bit of knowledge before you go in. Maybe you don't know exactly, everything about it or what's wrong or whatever, but I've always found that I can find, a little bit of knowledge on something online. And then you do, when you walk in and you know something. I think that starts you out on the right foot, or it has been for me in the past, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed too, like do a battery change or even windshield wipers. We're talking basic stuff. There
Mhm.
are places like AutoZone that
Mhm.
are designed to help you. So you walk in and say, I need to buy this. They give you 3 or 4 options. You make a decision. And then they say, do you need help putting it on? You're like, yeah, because if I didn't know how to do that, at least they could help me, you know?
Right.
So
Eh,
I think there are places and locations to do that. But I think it's hard because when you're new, especially a girl, and don't want to walk in and feel stupid. So I do like your idea of some Google reviews. I think too, some local Facebook groups. You could say, "Hey, I want to use XYZ store. Can somebody give me a recommendation? Do I need to know things?" That might be a good way to do it.
mhm. And you can even search the Google reviews and look for ladies that left reviews.
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah, I've done
Yeah,
that
and
in the past.
yeah, I just think it does require us to do a little bit of research. Well, I think it's just a matter of having that confidence, like you said, to do a little bit of research,
Mhm.
maybe asking around your wheelie, or have some friends get this is really a bad connection. Get their information so that you're becoming friends that are in your phone. So when you do need that help or that I think that's a good way to do that.
Right. And, putting the word out in your Facebook forum, your little Jeep groups or whatever, asking who other people use and things like that. And I have found, even if you don't want to ask in those groups yourself, if you search the groups for mechanics or maintenance or even oil change or tires, you can find stuff, where they've given reviews or people had a good experience or a bad experience. And that way you don't even have to ask the question yourself. You can just see what other people have already written in the groups.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. Yeah, sort of doing it anonymous.
Right? Because sometimes when you ask a question in the group, you just get hammered with all these responses, and 50% of them aren't even useful for what you need. It's just
Yeah,
people typing for the sake of typing. So
yeah, it's silly, silly stuff there. So let's talk about when you need detail. Like you want to do an upgrade, you want to do a lift, you want to add some different things to your Jeep, and you start building. That I
mhm.
think is a whole different level of trying to find a good place.
Yeah, 100%. That's not just something that I think I mean, in my opinion, that you just, go to some run of the mill shop, you do a Google search and you go to the closest place, or at least in my opinion and experience. What do you think, Wendy?
Yeah, I think it's hard for us too. So my husband Bill has been a mechanic his whole life. And because of the situation he had about a year ago, he's not able to do the work on the Jeep. So I'm in the same boat as somebody who's brand new, going, who do I use? How do I do this? How do I find somebody that's a good mechanic or somebody who can trace down an issue or find things? So I do ask people that I wheel with that I respect. I also see that those people have gone to certain place, maybe had an upgrade, had a new axle put in, a lift put in, and then they're out wheeling. So I know it worked.
Hmm.
Right. So you kind of go, hey, where did you go? Yeah. And some of those connections too, I could say, look, I don't want to walk into a shop and say, I need this figured out, but how can I word this so it's going to sound like I know what I'm doing? So I think this is the hardest thing. You could be a new driver, you could be a girl or a guy, and you want to do an upgrade or you want to do a lift. And if you post that on Facebook or your group and say, who's the best one for this, you're going to have 15 different answers. And how do you pick it? How do you decide who to go with? Any thoughts on that? Like,
Yeah.
what would be your criteria?
So When I first started, so we build all of our stuff now and work on all of our stuff now, but that wasn't the way when I got started. And so I totally get this. So I did a little bit of that anonymous searching on groups, like I told you about, to read some stuff and compared that with some Google reviews. And then I called around and asked some questions. I, of course, did the research first, and I had a fair amount of mechanical knowledge. I grew up with my grandfather, who is a truck driver and works on vehicles. So I didn't feel like totally helpless in talking about stuff, but I did some research and kind of had an idea of what I wanted. And then I called around and talked to some people, and I felt a connection. I know that sounds silly, but really I had a good, engaged conversation. Yeah. And so Mike at Platinum Off-Road, I know he's been a guest on Jeep Talk Show, not on Chick Chat, but on other episodes. And he worked on my Jeep for years, and another friend now worked on my Jeep, but like Mike talked to me and explained things and answered my questions and just was fantastic and funny. And we just got along, and we created a friendship now that has lasted years. But to me, I think it's really just feeling like you have that connection. You talk to somebody and it feels right.
Yeah. And that's hard too when you're new, because you don't even know what questions to ask or what to search. And, let's say that you want to do a lift. You bought a stock Jeep, and I think the best thing to do is to start with a group that you're running with. Ask people what size lift they have on their Jeep, as an example. Because you may be thinking 4 inches is what I want, but when you see a 4-inch lift Jeep and you can't get into their Jeep, right? Because they've got 37s or 40s on their Jeep, you can't even get in there. So I think asking around on whatever you're trying to do or rebuild or to build up, and see if they can give you some information to give you a guideline, a little bit of a guide. Because otherwise, I sometimes what newbies do is they see the Jeep and they think, I want 37s. Well, they don't realize now you might have to re-gear, or you might have to do something else to your Jeep and get better suspension. So it's kind of like learning the hard way, right? You're going to buy a few things before you realize I didn't need to do that. I don't know. Yeah.
100%. 100%. So I kind of grew like with mine. I wheeled mine stock and then kind of learned and did exactly what you're talking about. I saw other Jeeps on the trail. I saw how they performed and I asked questions, and then I built some and wheeled it like that and learned. And I don't know, to me, I like kind of that, because you grow as your Jeep grows, but then there's also the buy once, cry once mentality, which is just build it up to start, because I'm on Walker's my Jeep name. I'm on like Walker 4.0 by now, because we've overhauled it and rebuilt it so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the thing that I think is, what is it? It's ominous. Because you have the stock Jeep and you're looking at somebody sitting next to you that's completely built. So it doesn't happen overnight. If you're made of money and money is no object, send it away to a good shop, let them build it, be done. But I think most of us do it in segment. We might add one size up tire. We might then go to lockers if we don't have them. We do skin plates underneath. There are a lot of things that we can do one at a time, doesn't cost a ton of money. And then, like you said, go out and wheel it and see how it goes. If you like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's expensive. And so, wouldn't it be nice to just go spend all the money and build it all at once? But that's not the reality. It wasn't the reality for me, and it's not the reality for most people. So, yeah, I think you've got to learn. And you see, like when you're out there wheeling and you see other Jeeps and how they perform, and you're like, man, I really liked that upgrade and that went well, And so maybe you can learn from that build and get some inspiration there. And when you talk to those people about their upgrades and what they have, that might give you some information to talk to the shop owners about.
Let's talk a little bit about the finding a place if you want some major repairs or
Mhm.
major work done. So the reason I'm also saying this is that my husband's son has a beautiful Chevy Silverado truck. Glenn says I need Starlink. Yeah, no kidding. Up here in the mountains, I definitely do. Um, anyway, he was out wheeling and doing some mud puddles and stuff. Well, this was too deep and he went in too fast. So we're
Oh,
not sure if the engine's seized, but it definitely is not working. So there is mud and water everywhere. He's got water inside the engine. It's pretty bad. So my thought was, where does he go? He's not going to go back to a dealer. He's not a Jeep. So, how he's asking me, do I have anybody I recommend? I'm like, maybe, but do they work on that model? It's a newer Chevy, all computerized. So it does make you say, where and how do you find something? So
yeah. That specialty stuff can be hard to find because even something like that, even if it was us in a Jeep,
yeah,
you probably just couldn't go to your 4x4 shop and have that done.
no.
I think
And
that's where you really rely on your community to start talking and to people and see who they recommend. What do you think?
yeah, and I think you have to be careful too, because it's like you could ask the question, who recommends what brand of tire? Oh my gosh, you're going to get a ton of different people with all different experiences, and they all would be correct. But how would you choose a tire for yourself, right? So you have to believe somebody, follow somebody. Anyway, but I think when you get into major repairs, you need someone who really can wrench on an engine. I think that would be something I'd be
Mm-hmm.
looking for, not just a regular local shop that does basic things. I think you're going to get in trouble financially because they're going to take your money, probably not fix the problem. So I think if you specialize thing that's wrong, like a ground issue or like this engine could be seized, you need a true mechanic. And I think that's going to be difference on that. If you're just looking to do upgrades, add a lift, a skid plate, I think you need to do research on the types that are out there. You can ask questions about certain brands, get people's opinion. And then when you walk into the shop and say, look, I've narrowed it down to these 3 brands. What do you think? And if you've done your research, you kind of know where you're leading. But there's all kinds of things out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think being the area that you're in, so like I'm a little bit rural, but I'm close to the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex.
Mm,
And so in Dallas, you can find a specialty shop for anything. My stepdad used to have a Jaguar. You could go to a Jaguar specific mechanic. So I
right.
think even if you're having to get super specific with something, you might have to go into a little bit, more of an urban area.
A bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have those options here in Southern California. But again, you could put that out there and say, I'm looking to do X. And first off, we have the keyboard warriors that are saying, this is what I did for me. Well, that's great. You can work on your Jeep yourself. But if I'm looking to hire somebody, I don't want to be taken advantage of, but I also want to spend the money the right way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that, you bought a brand new stock Jeep. You've been out on the dirt a couple times. And now you want to do something. You want to get started. A few extra things. What do you think is the first thing they should be doing?
Um, well, for me, I didn't have a Rubicon, so the first thing I did was quick disconnects for wheeling. And I think looking at maybe, depending on what your Jeep came with, tires. street tires may not be the best option out there. Looking at a little bit of a lift, to run maybe different tires, because if you're going to spend the money on tires, and maybe you want to go up a little bit more, but it also depends on what kind of wheeling are you going to want to do? Are you rocks? Are you mud? Are you fire trails or fire roads? So I think all of those things are kind of a consideration too.
Well, like you were saying, it does depend on what you're going to do and what you're going to wheel. If you want to do something more than just a basic fire road, I think, like you said, looking at some better tires, street tires versus something that can go off-road. There's a lot of options out there. There's ATs out there that give you that all-terrain, that give you that little bit of a good traction. Certain brands are better than others, of course. I think what some people look at, though, is they want to go out and buy lights, and then they want to do a winch, or they think they need lockers. And those three things are sort of like the last things that you're ever going to really do. It just depends on what you're doing. And the winch is only needed if you're really doing major terrain or some bad areas. Like I could mud areas in the country, where you want to get out and wheel and you can pull somebody out. But even then, you can do a lot of that with a strap. So I think that's the biggest misnomer, is that when you start wheeling, is that you think, I need to get a winch. I need to get lights. I think I have to have lockers. Well, you really don't. You can do a lot of wheeling without them. So, and lights, even when we do runs, we do not have them turned on. It's only the lead Jeep gets to turn them on. So I don't know. It's a lot of money spent that I think you do other things.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, love lights, and if that's your thing and you love it, fantastic. I just I never spent a lot of money on lights because I always wanted to buy other things. I did win a pair of nacho lights in a giveaway not too long ago, which I love. Fun. But we do a lot of night wheeling out at Hidden Falls, and we have like good actual rock lights, like not just the ones in the wheel wells that look cool, like actual, pointed at the ground in key areas so we can see when we, are night wheeling. But that's a very niche thing. If you're not doing that, you might not need that.
Well, and there's been times on recoveries where we do need more light. And that's when it's benefit to have it. But usually the lights on the physical Jeep that needs help doesn't help. It's the lights on someone else's Jeep. So, but like you said, there's a huge industry for lights. People love it. I just think if you're new, that's probably not the first thing you need to run to.
Yep, exactly. And, like you said about lockers, I mean, are lockers awesome? Yep. Do they make a lot of situations easier? Uh-huh. But I wheeled for a long time without them. And it, in my opinion, it made me better. Yeah, it made me better, to learn how to navigate without it. So sometimes now, Mike will be like, are your lockers on? I'm like, nope, gonna try it without it first and see how it goes. Nope. For better or for worse. But yeah, you can certainly get out there.
That's what we could always do on major obstacles.
Mm-hmm. It's like a challenge, right?
Challenge. Okay, none of us use lockers. Yeah, I did that without lockers. Well, it's learning how to drive. It's learning how to drive.
Yeah, we were out leading a group not too long ago, and there was this trail, and it's a hard trail. It's a hard obstacle. And one of my friends wanted to try it, and he was like, I don't have lockers. I was like, you can do this without lockers. I've done it. He's like, I don't know. And I said, watch this. Drove back down to the bottom and went up it with no lockers. And I was like, no lockers. See, you can do it. And so he did. He came up behind me. He was like, yeah, I can do it. I was like, I promised you, I wouldn't tell you, just get out there and tear your stuff up. Is it harder? Yeah. Do you have to work for it more? Yeah, but you can totally do it. And it builds skill.
Yeah. Big time skill. The other thing I think is interesting is new drivers think the minute they hit the dirt, they have to turn the lockers on. Mm-hmm. It is so hard on the equipment to drive with your lockers on. First off, your turning ability, it's impossible. So you really just turn them on when you get that moment, you get up and over that obstacle, you turn it on again. So yeah, again, so much equipment.
When I first got them, I was like, when do I use these? What do I do? So my buddy Mike was spotting me at the obstacles. He'd be like, lockers on. And I do lockers off. So, like for the first trail, he did that for me. So until I got the hang of what I was doing, but it helped. And so, you don't know what you don't know. I'd been so used to doing it without it. So as you guys can tell, Wendy's having some internet issues, and unfortunately, it's kind of putting a damper on the show, but we will be back in 2 weeks. I think we're talking about some really cool topics here about, finding a good shop and, how to do that, our experiences, and also like when you start your build, where do you go? Like, how do you start? What do you look for? If this is content that you guys would be interested in, or you have some input, we want to know. There's Wendy. Maybe she'll be back.
Maybe.
So if you guys are interested in the topics that Wendy and I were talking about, let us know, and we can maybe pick up on some of these topics on our next episode, and maybe transition into some new ones about, maybe you've done your first upgrades and you're ready to go a little bit bigger, or maybe you've done your upgrades and you're looking to try some more gnarly trails. What do you do? But anyway, we want to know, what do you think of the topics? What do you want to know more about? Maybe share some of your experiences with us. Comment on the videos, or message either one of us or Jeep Talk Show on social media, on Instagram. So we want to hear from you guys. And again, we're sorry about the connection issues, but such is life. But we can see Wendy, so let's wave goodbye to Wendy and for the A team, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. But that's it for this episode of Chick Chat, and we hope you've been inspired by our stories and our struggles, and hopefully you come back to actually hear the rest of the content for this episode. We'll go into the next one. So remember, there's no limits to what you can achieve when you embrace your passion and fearlessly chase your dreams. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Jeep Talk Show so you never miss an episode. Even when we struggle, remember, embrace the thrill of the off-road, embody your own unique style, and always keep pushing the boundaries of what you thought possible, because anything is possible.
Broadcasting since 2010.
That was so painful.
It was brutal. I'm sorry, Wendy.
You're my friend. You're my new friend.